The wrench slipped from Ethan Morgan's calloused hands, clattering against the truck's engine block. His eyes locked with the mysterious woman's sea-green gaze across the open hood. She handed him the correct tool before he even asked for it, a moment of perfect understanding passing between them. He didn't know why this stranger with the haunted eyes had shown up on his failing farm, but somehow, he felt like she belonged here. He didn't know that last month, her face had been splashed across every tabloid in America. He didn't know that helping her fix this broken-down truck would end up fixing something in both of them. He didn't know that everything was about to change. Before we carry on, let me know where you are watching from in the comments, and hit the subscribe button for something special tomorrow. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on Ethan Morgan's weathered farmhouse. The paint, once of vibrant white, had long since faded to a dull gray that matched the clouds gathering on the horizon. Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow as he finished repairing the ancient irrigation pump that serviced the eastern field, the only field he had managed to plant this season. At 34, the lines around his eyes had deepened well beyond his years, carved by worry and endless labor. Wheat prices had plummeted again, the fourth consecutive year of decline. The bank had sent another letter yesterday, the third this month, with increasingly urgent reminders about his mortgage payments. Ethan had added it to the stack of bills on his kitchen table without opening it. He already knew what it said. His dog, Max, a weathered border collie who had been his constant companion for nearly a decade, barked from the direction of the long gravel driveway that connected the farm to the county road. Ethan straightened his back, wincing at the familiar pop of his spine, and squinted against the glare of the sun. A cloud of dust rose in the distance, accompanied by the labored growl of an engine clearly operating well past its prime. The truck that emerged from the dust was a faded red Ford F-150 that might have been new sometime during the Clinton administration. Black smoke belched from the exhaust pipe, and the engine made a rhythmic knocking sound that told Ethan the vehicle wouldn't make it another mile. The driver seemed to realize this too, guiding the struggling vehicle toward his barn rather than continuing down the road. As Ethan approached, the truck gave one final, violent shudder before the engine died completely. Steam hissed from under the hood, joining the black smoke in a toxic cocktail. The driver's door swung open with a protesting creak of rusted hinges. A woman stepped out, her movements precise and deliberate despite obvious exhaustion. She was wearing faded jeans, dusty work boots, and a plain navy blue t-shirt. A baseball cap was pulled low over her eyes, and large sunglasses obscured half her face. Despite the casual clothing, there was something incongruous about her, the kind of incongruity that came from someone trying very hard to look like they belonged somewhere they didn't. "I'm sorry to intrude," she said, her voice carrying a hint of huskiness that might have been natural or might have been from the road dust. "My truck decided to die here. I was hoping I might be able to use a phone to call for help." Ethan pulled off his work gloves and extended a hand. "Ethan Morgan. And it's no intrusion. Phones are spotty out here, but I'm pretty handy with engines." The woman hesitated for a moment before taking his hand. Her grip was firmer than he expected, but her skin was soft against his calluses. "Alexandra." "Alex. Thank you, but I wouldn't want to impose any further." "It's no imposition," Ethan said, already moving toward the front of the truck. "Pop the hood and let's take a look. Might be something simple." Alex seemed about to protest further, but then nodded, reaching through the open door to release the hood latch. As the hood swung up, a fresh cloud of steam escaped, forcing both of them to step back. When it cleared, Ethan leaned in to inspect the damage, immediately spotting several issues. "Well, your radiator's cracked for starters," he said, pointing to the obvious fracture in the plastic component. "And your timing belt's on its last legs. I'm surprised you made it this far." "Is it fixable?" Alex asked, standing beside him and peering into the engine compartment. Ethan considered the question. "Yes, but not quickly, and not without parts. Nearest auto store is in Riverside, about 40 miles west. I can call my buddy Jake, who runs a tow service, but he's probably not available until tomorrow morning." Alex's shoulders slumped slightly. "I see. Is there a motel nearby where I could stay tonight?" Ethan shook his head. "Nothing closer than Riverside, but He hesitated, glancing toward the farmhouse. "I've got a spare room. It's nothing fancy, but you're welcome to it for the night." The offer surprised them both. Ethan wasn't in the habit of inviting strangers into his home, especially not ones who radiated the kind of tension that this woman did. But there was something about era weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion, a vulnerability carefully hidden beneath a composed exterior that made him want to help. Alex was silent for a long moment, her expression unreadable behind the sunglasses. Then, to Ethan's surprise, she removed them, revealing striking green eyes that assessed him with careful deliberation. Whatever she saw in his face seemed to satisfy her. "That's very kind," she said finally. "If you're sure it's not too much trouble." "No trouble," Ethan replied, surprised to find he meant it. "Let me help you get your bags." "Just one," Alex said, moving to the passenger side of the truck. She pulled out a medium-sized duffel bag, declining his offer to carry it with a small shake of her head. As they walked toward the house, Max circled them curiously, sniffing at Alex's boots before apparently deciding she was acceptable and trotting ahead to lead the way. The farmhouse looked even more tired up close, its need for repair evident in the sagging porch steps and missing shingles. Ethan felt a flash of embarrassment as he opened the screen door, acutely aware of the peeling paint and worn furniture that greeted them inside. "Kitchen's through there," he said, gesturing to his right. "Bathroom's down the hall, first door on the left. Spare room is next to it." He cleared his throat. "Like I said, it's nothing fancy." "It's perfect," Alex said quietly, her eyes taking in the faded family photographs on the walls and the stack of farming magazines on the coffee table. "Thank you." While Alex freshened up, Ethan made a quick call to Jake about towing the truck and then set about preparing dinner. His culinary skills were limited, but he managed a decent beef stew with vegetables from his small garden. By the time Alex emerged from the spare room, her hair damp from a shower and her face scrubbed clean, the kitchen was filled with the rich aroma of simmering stew. "That smells amazing," she said, hovering in the doorway as if uncertain whether to enter. Ethan gestured to the small kitchen table. "Have a seat, it's almost ready." Without the cap and sunglasses, Alex's features were more defined high cheekbones, a straight nose, and those remarkable green eyes. There was something vaguely familiar about her, though Ethan couldn't place it. Perhaps she reminded him of someone he'd known years ago. As they ate, conversation came more easily than Ethan had expected. They kept to safe topics: the weather, the quality of the local roads, the stew which Alex praised enthusiastically. Alex was articulate and surprisingly knowledgeable about agriculture, asking informed questions about his farm operations that suggested personal experience rather than casual interest. "My grandfather had a farm in Vermont," she explained when he commented on this. "I spent summers there as a child." "What brings you through this part of the country?" Ethan asked, careful to keep his tone casual. "Not much out here, except farms, and more farms." A shadow crossed Alex's face. "I'm on my way west, taking the scenic route." The deliberate vagueness wasn't lost on Ethan, but he respected her privacy. Everyone had things they preferred not to discuss with strangers. "Well, you picked a beautiful time of year for it," he said instead. "Another month and the wheat fields will be golden as far as the eye can see." He didn't mention that most of those fields wouldn't be his, that he'd had to lease much of his land to larger operations just to keep afloat. After dinner, they moved to the small porch, where the evening air provided relief from the day's heat. Ethan offered Alex a beer, which she accepted with a small smile. They sat in companionable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "It's so quiet here," Alex said eventually, her voice soft in the gathering darkness. "Peaceful. Most people find it too quiet," Ethan replied. "Too isolated." Alex took a sip of her beer. "Not me. I think it's perfect." Something in her tone made Ethan glance at her. In the fading light, with her guard momentarily lowered, she looked younger and somehow more vulnerable. He wondered again what she was running from, because he was increasingly certain that she was running from something. "Jake will be here around 8 tomorrow morning," he said, changing the subject. "He'll tow your truck to his shop in town. I can drive you there once he's had a chance to look at it." "I appreciate that," Alex said, turning to meet his gaze. And everything else. Not everyone would help a stranger like this. Ethan shrugged. Out here, we have to look out for each other. Never know when you might be the one broken down on the side of the road. Later, as he lay in bed listening to the occasional creaks and groans of the old farmhouse, Ethan reflected on the strange turn his day had taken. The woman sleeping in his spare room was a mystery, one he doubted he would have the chance to solve before she continued on her journey west. That thought brought an unexpected pang of disappointment. He pushed it aside and closed his eyes, letting the familiar sounds of the countryside lull him to sleep. Alex Winters, known to the world as Alexandra St. James, lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, studying the patterns of moonlight on the ceiling. The room was simple, with furniture that had seen decades of use, but had been well maintained. A handmade quilt covered the bed, its intricate patterns suggesting hours of patient work by someone who had loved this place. These people. 6 weeks ago, she had been in a penthouse suite in New York City, preparing for the premiere of her latest film. 6 weeks ago, her face had been on billboards in Times Square and plastered across buses from Los Angeles to London. 6 weeks ago, before the scandal broke, and everything she had built over 15 years in the industry came crashing down around her. The affair with her married director had been a mistake from the beginning, one born of loneliness and poor judgment, rather than any genuine emotion. The leaked text messages had been taken out of context, making her sound calculating and predatory, rather than human and flawed. The director had quickly reconciled with his wife, issuing a statement that implied Alex had pursued him aggressively. The studio had distanced itself from the controversy by quietly dropping her from the upcoming sequel. And just like that, Alexandra St. James, 3-time Golden Globe nominee and Hollywood's most bankable female action star, had become toxic. The relentless media coverage had driven her from her home. Paparazzi had camped outside her gate, shouting questions designed to provoke a reaction they could capture and sell. Former friends had stopped returning her calls. Her agent had suggested she lie low for a few months, until the next celebrity scandal took her place in the headlines. So, Alexandra had become Alex, trading designer clothes for jeans and t-shirts, her luxury SUV for an ancient pickup truck purchased for cash from a small dealership in Pennsylvania. She had cut her signature long blonde hair to shoulder length and dyed it a nondescript brown. Without the professional styling, the expensive makeup, and the careful lighting, she looked different enough that no one had recognized her so far. She hadn't planned to stop at this farm. The truck's problems had been developing throughout the day, but she had hoped to make it to the next town before seeking help. Now, looking around this quiet room, in this quiet house, she felt an unexpected sense of relief. Here, in this place that seemed forgotten by time, perhaps she could catch her breath before continuing her journey to nowhere in particular. The farmer Ethan had been kind, in a straightforward, unassuming way that had become unfamiliar to her. He had offered help without expectation, shared his home without hesitation. And most importantly, he had looked at her without a flicker of recognition, seeing only a woman in need of assistance rather than a celebrity in disgrace. The realization was both humbling and freeing. For tonight, at least, she could simply be Alex, a woman with a broken truck. Tomorrow would come soon enough. Morning arrived in a chorus of roosters and birdsong. Ethan was already in the kitchen when Alex emerged from the spare room, his hair damp from a shower and his clothes fresh if worn. The coffee was brewing, filling the space with its rich aroma. "Morning," he said, glancing up from the skillet where he was scrambling eggs. "Sleep okay?" "Better than I have in weeks," Alex admitted, accepting the mug of coffee he offered. "Your farm has good energy." A smile tugged at the corner of Ethan's mouth. First time anyone said that about this place in a while. As they ate breakfast, Ethan outlined his plan for the day. Jake would tow the truck to his shop, and once he'd had a chance to assess the damage, Ethan would drive Alex into town. "I need to pick up some supplies anyway," he explained, "so it's no trouble." Alex watched him as he spoke, noting the quiet competence in his movements and the care he took to make her feel welcome without being intrusive. In her former world, everyone always wanted something. Attention, validation, advancement, connection to her network of influential friends. Ethan seemed to want nothing more than to be helpful. Just as they were finishing breakfast, the sound of a diesel engine announced Jake's arrival. He proved to be a burly man in his 50s, with a weathered face and a booming laugh that seemed at odds with his size. "So, this is the patient," he said, examining Alex's truck with professional interest. "Seen better days, hasn't she? Can you fix it?" Alex asked, trying to keep the anxiety from her voice. The truck represented her freedom, her ability to keep moving if necessary. Jake scratched his beard thoughtfully. "Probably. Won't know for sure until I get her up on the lift. Radiator's definitely shot, and there's likely collateral damage. Parts might take a day or two to come in." Alex's heart sank. "That long?" "Welcome to country living," Jake said, with a sympathetic smile. "Nothing happens fast out here." As Jake secured the truck to his tow rig, Alex found herself standing beside Ethan, who was watching the procedure with his hands tucked into the pockets of his jeans. "You're welcome to stay until the truck's fixed," he said, his eyes still on Jake's methodical work. "Spare room's not going anywhere." The offer caught Alex off guard. "I couldn't impose like that." "It's not an imposition," Ethan replied, finally turning to look at her. "Truth is, I could use an extra pair of hands around here for a couple of days. Consider it payment for room and board." Before Alex could respond, Jake approached them, wiping his hands on a rag. "All set. I'll call once I know what we're dealing with." He handed Ethan a business card. "That's got my cell number. Reception's better at the shop than out here." As they watched Jake drive away with the truck in tow, Alex felt a curious mixture of anxiety and relief. She had carefully avoided staying in one place for too long since leaving New York, part of her strategy to stay ahead of the media. Yet the prospect of a few days on this quiet farm held an unexpected appeal. "About your offer," she said, turning to face Ethan directly. "I'm not much of a farmer, but I'm a quick learner, and I'm not afraid of hard work." Ethan's expression lightened. "That makes one of each of us then. I could use help with the vegetable garden today, if you're up for it." And just like that, Alex found herself spending the day with her hands in the rich soil of Ethan's garden, learning the difference between vegetable seedlings and weeds, the proper depth for planting tomato starts, and the art of gentle mulching. The work was physically demanding, but satisfying in a way that hours in the gym never had been. Ethan was a patient teacher, explaining the why behind each task without being condescending. By midday, they had planted 3 new rows of vegetables and thoroughly weeded the existing ones. Alex's back ached and her fingernails were rimmed with dirt, but she felt more grounded than she had in months. They ate lunch on the porch, simple sandwiches and cold lemonade that tasted better than any meal at the exclusive restaurants she used to frequent. As they ate, Ethan pointed out features of the landscape. The creek that ran along the eastern boundary of his property. The copse of trees where a family of deer often sheltered. The distant silhouette of the mountain range that dominated the western horizon. "How long has this farm been in your family?" Alex asked, genuinely curious. 4 generations, Ethan replied, his expression softening with pride despite the obvious challenges he faced. "My great-grandfather settled here in 1903, built the original homestead with his own hands." He gestured toward a small structure at the edge of the yard that now served as a tool shed. "We've added on over the years, but those are still the original walls." "That's incredible," Alex said, trying to imagine such deep roots in one place. Her own childhood had been spent moving from city to city as her mother followed job opportunities in the hospitality industry. "It must mean a lot to you." "Everything," Ethan said simply. Then, as if embarrassed by the emotion in his voice, he stood and collected their plates. "Jake should have called by now. Let me check if I missed a message." While Ethan went inside, Alex remained on the porch, absorbing the peaceful scene before her. In the distance, a tractor moved slowly across a neighboring field, raising a cloud of dust that glinted golden in the afternoon sun. Closer by, butterflies danced among the wildflowers that bordered the yard. Max lay at her feet, occasionally thumping his tail against the wooden boards of the porch when she reached down to scratch behind his ears. This place was real in a way that had become foreign to her. There were no filters, No carefully constructed narratives. No images manipulated to create a more marketable reality. Just sun and soil and the honest work of growing things. When Ethan returned, his expression was apologetic. Jake says the damage is worse than he thought. The radiator cracked because the water pump failed, which caused the engine to overheat. He needs to order several parts, and with shipping to this area, we're looking at 3 or 4 days. Alex absorbed this news with mixed emotions. Part of her felt trapped. Another part felt a strange sense of reprieve. I should find a motel, she said half-heartedly. Or you could stay, Ethan countered. The offer stands. I could really use the help, and it would save you the expense of a motel room. There were 100 reasons to decline, reasons related to privacy and security and the risk of being recognized. But the thought of returning to anonymous motel rooms and solitary meals held no appeal. If you're sure, she said finally, I'd like to stay. Something that might have been pleasure flickered across Ethan's face. Good. That's settled then. Now, if you're not too tired, I could use help with the irrigation pump on the east field. The next few days fell into a rhythm that felt both novel and strangely familiar to Alex. They rose with the sun each morning, sharing breakfast before heading out to tackle the day's tasks. Ethan was trying to repair and upgrade various aspects of the farm's infrastructure projects that had been delayed due to lack of time and extra hands. Alex discovered she had a knack for mechanical work, her dexterity and attention to detail proving useful as they repaired fences, tuned up tractors, and cleaned out irrigation channels. Each night, she fell into bed pleasantly exhausted, her sleep deeper and more restful than it had been since before the scandal broke. Ethan, she learned, had inherited the farm upon his father's death 5 years earlier. His mother had passed away when he was in college, and he had no siblings. He had been working as an agricultural consultant in the city, putting his degree in agronomy to use advising large farming operations when the responsibility of the family farm had fallen to him. I could have sold it, he admitted one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Probably should have, from a financial standpoint, but I couldn't bring myself to be the one who ended the Morgan legacy. I understand, Alex said, and she did. Despite the hardships he faced, there was an integrity to Ethan's choice that she respected deeply. Sometimes the value of something can't be measured in dollars. Ethan gave her a curious look. Exactly. Not many people get that. On the third day, as they worked together to replace rotted boards on the barn's exterior, Jake called with news that the parts for the truck had arrived. He expected to have the repairs completed by the following afternoon. That's great news, Alex said automatically when Ethan relayed the information. But the words felt hollow, even to her own ears. Ethan nodded, his expression carefully neutral. You'll be back on the road in no time. They worked in silence for a while, the rhythm of their hammers filling the space where conversation had been. Finally, Ethan spoke again, his tone deliberately casual. Where are you headed anyway, when you get back on the road? Alex hesitated. She had been deliberately vague about her destination, partly out of habit, and partly because she didn't really know herself. West was more of a direction than a destination. I'm not sure, she admitted finally. Just away from some things. Ethan nodded, accepting this known answer without pushing for more. Sometimes away is the most important direction. That evening, after a dinner of pasta with vegetables from the garden, they sat on the porch, as had become their custom. The night was clear, the stars brilliantly visible, in a way they never were in the city. A comfortable silence stretched between them until Ethan broke it with an unexpected question. Are you in some kind of trouble, Alex? She tensed, her fingers tightening around her glass. Why do you ask? You're running from something, he said simply. I've been trying to respect your privacy, but I'd like to know if there's anything I should be worried about for your sake or mine. The concern in his voice seemed genuine, without judgment or suspicion. Alex found herself wanting to tell him the truth or, at least part of it. I'm not in danger, she said carefully. And I'm not dangerous. I made some poor choices. The consequences were public and humiliating. I needed space to figure out what's next. Ethan studied her face in the dim light. Someone hurt you. It wasn't a question, but Alex answered anyway. I hurt myself. Mostly. Trusted the wrong people. Made decisions I'm not proud of. We've all done that, Ethan said, his voice gentle. Though I'll admit my mistakes didn't come with an audience. For a moment, Alex thought he had recognized her, but his next words dispelled that notion. Small towns can feel like fishbowls too, he continued. After Dad died, every decision I made was dissected over coffee at the diner. Did you hear Morgan's boy is selling off the South Acres? I saw him turning away the seed salesman. Must be worse off than we thought. You learn to develop a thick skin. The comparison made Alex smile despite herself. I suppose small towns in Hollywood have that in common. Everyone thinks they know your business. And everyone has an opinion about it, Ethan agreed with a wry smile of his own. They lapsed into silence again, but it was more comfortable now, the air between them clearer for having acknowledged, however obliquely, that they were both carrying burdens. Thank you, Alex said eventually, for not pushing for details. Ethan's response was simple but profound. Your story is yours to tell, when and if you want to. That night, lying in bed, Alex found herself thinking about Ethan's words. For years, her story had belonged to everyone but her, shaped by directors, publicists, journalists, fans. Even this latest chapter, the scandal that had driven her from her life, had been narrated by voices not her own. Ethan's quiet respect for her privacy felt like a gift she hadn't known she needed. The next day, as promised, Jake called to say the truck was ready. Ethan offered to drive Alex into town to pick it up, his manner subdued in a way it hadn't been before. The drive was mostly silent, both of them seemingly lost in their own thoughts. Riverside proved to be a small town with a single main street lined with brick buildings that had seen better days. Jake's garage was at the far end, adjacent to a gas station that looked like it hadn't updated its pumps since the 1980s. There she is, good as new, Jake announced as they entered the office. Well, maybe not new, but she'll get you where you're going. Alex thanked him and paid the bill, which was considerably lower than she had expected. When she mentioned this, Jake shrugged. Fixed a few extra things while I was in there, didn't charge you for the labor. Friend of Ethan's gets the local discount. The simple kindness brought a lump to Alex's throat. Thank you. While Jake processed her payment, Ethan wandered over to a corkboard covered with local notices and advertisements. Hey Jake, he called over his shoulder. Is the drive-in still doing classic movie nights? Every Friday, Jake confirmed. Why, you planning a hot date? Ethan ignored the teasing. What's playing this week? Some action flick from a few years back, Jake replied, handing Alex her receipt. Can't remember the title. Something about his tone made Alex glance up sharply, but Jake's face revealed nothing as he continued to describe the event. They set up in the field behind the old mill. People bring lawn chairs, blankets. The Andersons sell popcorn and hot dogs from their food truck. It's a whole thing. Ethan turned to Alex. Interested? Could be fun before you hit the road again. The thought of attending a public movie screening even in a small town like Riverside set off alarm bells in Alex's mind. But the hopeful expression on Ethan's face made her hesitate. I should probably get going, she said reluctantly. Make some miles before dark. Right, Ethan said, disappointment evident in his voice despite his attempt to hide it. Of course. They drove back to the farm in silence, the newly repaired truck following Ethan's pickup. As they pulled into the driveway, Alex felt a strange reluctance to leave this place that had become a sanctuary of sorts. Ethan helped her load her duffel bag into the truck, his movements efficient but lacking the easy camaraderie of the past few days. When everything was ready, they stood facing each other beside the open driver's door, the moment awkward in a way their interactions had never been before. Thank you, Alex said sincerely. For everything. The room, the meals, letting me help around the farm. It meant more than I can say. Ethan nodded, his expression softening. You're welcome here any time, Alex. If you're ever passing through again. The invitation hung in the air between them, full of unspoken questions and possibilities. Alex found herself reluctant to end this brief interlude in her otherwise chaotic life. About the drive-in, she said impulsively. Maybe I could stay one more night? It sounds fun. The smile that spread across Ethan's face was worth the risk she was taking. Yeah? That would be great. It doesn't start until sunset, so we have plenty of time. And so, against her better judgment, Alex agreed to postpone her departure for one more day. They spent the afternoon harvesting vegetables from the garden. The earlier tension between them replaced by a new awareness that made even simple tasks feel charged with meaning. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, they prepared for the evening out. Alex changed into her cleanest jeans and a simple button-down shirt she found in her duffel bag. She used the small mirror in the bathroom to apply minimal makeup enough to enhance her features without being recognizable as Alexandra St. James' signature look. When she emerged from the spare room, Ethan was waiting in the kitchen, having also changed into fresh clothes. The sight of him in clean jeans and a blue shirt that brought out the color of his eyes made her breath catch unexpectedly. "Ready?" he asked, seeming equally affected by her appearance. They drove to the drive-in with the windows down, the warm evening air carrying the scents of summer-cut hay, wildflowers, the occasional whiff of barbecue from houses they passed. Ethan pointed out local landmarks as they drove, telling stories about the people who lived and worked in this community. The field behind the old mill was already filling with cars and people when they arrived. Ethan parked his truck facing the massive white sheet that had been hung against the side of the mill building to serve as a screen. From the bed of his pickup, he produced a pile of blankets and 2 folding chairs. "I come prepared," he explained with a grin when Alex raised an eyebrow at his foresight. They set up their chairs in a good viewing spot, then made their way to the food truck for popcorn and sodas. Alex kept her cap pulled low and her sunglasses on, though the fading daylight made this look somewhat conspicuous. Still, no one seemed to pay her any particular attention as they mingled with the crowd. Ethan was greeted warmly by several people, who looked at Alex with friendly curiosity. He introduced her simply as, "My friend Alex, who's passing through town," and they accepted this without question, including her in their conversations as if she were a longtime member of the community. As they settled into their chairs to wait for the movie to begin, Alex felt a contentment that had been absent from her life for longer than she cared to admit. Here, in this simple gathering of people enjoying a summer evening together, she was just another face in the crowd valued for her presence rather than her fame. The last of the daylight faded and the projector flickered to life. The studio logo appeared on the makeshift screen, followed by the opening credits. And there, larger than life, was her own name. Alexandra St. James, in Beyond the Horizon. Alex froze, her body tense with sudden panic. Of all the movies that could have been shown, it had to be one of hers and not just any film, but the action thriller that had cemented her status as a leading lady 3 years earlier. She darted a glance at Ethan, who was watching the screen with interest, apparently still unaware of the connection. For a wild moment, she considered making an excuse and leaving before her face appeared on the screen. But before she could form a plan, the opening scene began, a sweeping aerial shot of a desert landscape, followed by a close-up of her character emerging from a sandstorm, face partially obscured by protective gear. Alex held her breath, waiting for the inevitable moment of recognition. On screen, her character removed her goggles and face covering, revealing the face that had launched 1,000 magazine covers. In her chair, Alex sank a little lower, though the darkness provided some cover. Beside her, Ethan leaned closer. "I haven't seen this one," he whispered. "Is it good?" The question was so normal, so disconnected from the surreal situation, that Alex almost laughed. "It's not bad," she whispered back. "The chase scene in the middle is pretty impressive." They fell silent as the movie progressed. Alex found herself watching her own performance with new eyes more critically than she had before, noting the moments of genuine emotion versus those that felt forced. It was strange to see herself as she had been, then confident, successful, untouchable. The woman on the screen seemed like a stranger now, halfway through the film. During a quieter character moment, Ethan glanced at her again. This time, his gaze lingered, traveling from her face to the screen and back again. Alex felt the moment he made the connection. His body stilled, his breath caught, audibly. "Alex," he said softly, too quietly for anyone else to hear. Please, she interrupted, her voice equally low. Not here. To his credit, Ethan immediately nodded, his expression one of concern rather than excitement or accusation. He returned his attention to the movie. Though Alex could feel his awareness of her had fundamentally shifted, the remainder of the film passed in a blur for Alex. Her attention divided between the action on screen and the man beside her who now knew her secret. When the credits finally rolled and the applause of the crowd faded, they packed up their chairs in silence and made their way back to the truck. It wasn't until they were on the road back to the farm that Ethan spoke. "I won't tell anyone." The simple statement, delivered without preamble, made Alex's throat tight with emotion. "Thank you. Is that what you were running from?" he asked gently, his eyes on the road ahead. Alex stared out the passenger window at the darkened landscape, weighing how much to reveal. The truth had been twisted and distorted by so many voices that she hardly knew where to begin. "Partly," she admitted finally. "There was a scandal, an affair with a director that ended badly. He was married, though he told me they were separated." She laughed, a hollow sound without humor. The oldest story in Hollywood. Ethan was quiet for a moment, processing this. "That's why you cut your hair? Changed how you look?" The paparazzi were camped outside my house. Every time I stepped outside, there were cameras, questions, people shouting horrible things. My own neighbors were selling tips about my movements to the tabloids. The memory still had the power to make her stomach clench with anxiety. I needed to disappear for a while. "And your truck breaking down by my farm wasn't planned?" "Complete coincidence," Alex confirmed, though maybe the universe knew what it was doing. She risked a glance at his profile, relieved to see no judgment there. "I'm sorry I wasn't honest with you." Ethan shook his head. "You have nothing to apologize for. You told me you were running from something public and humiliating. That was honest enough." They drove in silence for a few minutes, the truck's headlights carving a path through the darkness. When they turned onto the gravel driveway leading to the farm, Ethan spoke again. "For what it's worth, I liked Alex before I knew she was Alexandra St. James. Her company, her help around the farm, her conversation. That hasn't changed." The simple sincerity of this statement touched something deep within her. In a world where everyone wanted something from Alexandra St. James, Ethan Morgan had appreciated Alex for exactly who she was in the moment. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means more than you know." They pulled up to the farmhouse, the porch light casting a warm glow that seemed to welcome them home. Max emerged from his doghouse, tail wagging in greeting. As they climbed out of the truck, the night air cool against their skin, Alex made a decision. "I should leave in the morning," she said, though the words brought an unexpected pang of regret. Now that people here have seen the movie, someone else might make the connection. Ethan nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "That's probably smart. But I meant what I said. Her secret is safe with me." Inside, they moved through the familiar routine of making tea and settling on the porch for their evening conversation. But tonight, with her identity revealed, Alex found herself sharing stories she had kept locked away, the reality of life in the spotlight. The pressure to maintain a certain image, the isolation that came with fame. Ethan listened attentively, occasionally asking questions that revealed genuine interest rather than celebrity fascination. In turn, he opened up about the struggles he faced, trying to keep the farm afloat in an industry increasingly dominated by corporate agriculture. "The bank's been patient," he explained, "but I'm behind on the mortgage. If I can't make a significant payment by the end of harvest season, I'll lose the place." "I'm sorry," Alex said, recognizing the weight of potentially being the one to end a family legacy. "There's no other option?" Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've tried everything I can think of. Applied for loans, grants, even looked into those reality shows that save failing businesses. Nothing's panned out." "Those shows are mostly staged anyway," Alex said, thinking of colleagues who had appeared on similar programs. "The surprise renovations are planned months in advance." They talked late into the night, the conversation flowing easily now that the barrier of her secret had been removed. When exhaustion finally drove them to seek their beds, Alex felt lighter than she had in months, despite the knowledge that she would be leaving in the morning. Sleep, however, proved elusive. Her mind kept returning to Ethan and the peace she had found here, the connection that had formed so unexpectedly. The thought of returning to her solitary journey left her feeling hollow. Morning came too quickly, sunlight streaming through the curtains of the spare room. Alex packed her few belongings and joined Ethan in the kitchen, where coffee was already brewing. They ate breakfast mostly in silence, the knowledge of her imminent departure hanging between them. "I'll miss your help around here," Ethan said as she carried her duffel bag to the truck. "You're a natural farmer." Alex smiled at that. High praise, coming from a fourth-generation Morgan. They stood beside her truck, neither quite ready to say goodbye. Max circled their legs, sensing something was changing. "Where will you go?" Ethan asked finally. Alex shrugged. "I still don't know, just away. For now." The inadequacy of this answer frustrated her. In the past few days, something had shifted within her, a realization that running away wasn't the same as moving forward. But she had no clear vision of what moving forward might look like. "Will you let me know when you get there?" Ethan asked, offering her a piece of paper with his phone number written on it. "Wherever there turns out to be?" Alex took the paper, their fingers brushing briefly. "I will." And then there was nothing left but to say goodbye. Alex hugged Ethan impulsively, feeling his arms tighten around her in response. For a moment they stood locked together, both reluctant to let go. When they finally separated, the loss of contact left her cold despite the morning sun. "Thank you," she said again, those two inadequate words carrying the weight of everything she felt but couldn't express. Ethan nodded, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Drive safe." Alex climbed into the truck and started the engine, which purred smoothly thanks to Jake's repairs. As she pulled away, she watched Ethan and Max in the rearview mirror, two figures growing smaller with distance, but somehow remaining vividly present in her mind. The main road stretched before her, leading west as she had planned. But as she approached the intersection where she needed to turn, Alex found herself slowing down, uncertainty gripping her. For 3 months, she had been running from the scandal, from the person she had become in Hollywood, from the wreckage of a career built on image rather than substance. But in the past few days on Ethan's farm, she had glimpsed another possibility, a life built on something real, something honest. At the intersection, Alex sat with the engine idling, indicator blinking as she prepared to turn west. The car behind her honked impatiently. She waved an apology and pulled to the side of the road, her heart racing as she considered what she was contemplating. Staying would be risky. Eventually, someone would recognize her. The scandal would follow her here, potentially disrupting not just her life, but Ethan's as well. It was selfish to even consider it. And yet, Alex reached for her phone and, after a moment's hesitation, dialed the number Ethan had given her. He answered on the second ring, his voice cautiously hopeful. "Alex? I'm at the intersection by the convenience store," she said without preamble. "And I'm thinking I might have been hasty in leaving." There was a pause, and Alex held her breath, suddenly afraid she had misread everything. "The farm could use another pair of hands," Ethan said finally, his voice warm. "For as long as you want to stay." Relief washed over her. "I'll be right back." When she pulled into the farm's driveway 20 minutes later, Ethan was waiting on the porch, Max dancing excitedly around his legs. Alex parked the truck and stepped out, feeling as if she were stepping into a new life, or perhaps reclaiming a version of herself that had been buried beneath years of Hollywood artifice. "Welcome back," Ethan said simply, coming down the steps to meet her. "I don't know how long I can stay," Alex warned, needing to be honest about the uncertainties. "Sooner or later, someone will recognize me. We'll deal with that if it happens," Ethan replied. "For now, let's just take it day by day." And so Alex Winters, once known to the world as Alexandra St. James, returned to the spare room that had somehow begun to feel like hers. That afternoon, she helped Ethan repair a section of fence that had been damaged during a recent storm, her hands quickly relearning the work they had done just days before. As the weeks passed, a rhythm developed. They worked side by side during the days, tackling the endless tasks required to maintain the farm. In the evenings, they sat on the porch, talking, planning, sometimes just enjoying the companionable silence. Occasionally, they drove into Riverside for supplies or to see a movie at the old theater that had reopened for weekend showings. No one in town connected Alex with the famous actress from the drive-in movie. Without the glamorous styling, and in the context of Ethan's farm, she was just another face perhaps, a bit more striking than average, but not remarkably so. She found herself relaxing into this new anonymity, grateful for the chance to be seen as a person rather than a persona. Ethan, true to his word, never treated her differently after learning her identity. He consulted her on farm decisions, valued her opinion, and occasionally teased her about her surprisingly extensive knowledge of tractor engines, something she had learned for a role years earlier and never expected Datra to use in real life. As summer gave way to early autumn, the farm's few planted fields ripened toward harvest. The wheat turned golden under the sun, ready to be cut and sold. But even with a decent yield, Ethan's debt situation remained precarious. "The price per bushel is down again," he explained one evening, as they reviewed the farm's finances at the kitchen table. "Even with a good harvest, we'll fall short of what the bank wants." Alex studied the numbers, an idea forming that she had been considering for weeks. "What if I invested in the farm?" Ethan looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "I have money," Alex said, choosing her words carefully. "Quite a lot, actually, despite everything that happened. I could invest in upgrading the equipment, expanding the acreage under cultivation for next season, maybe even exploring organic certification to command higher prices." "Huh." Ethan's expression was unreadable. "I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking," Alex pointed out. "I'm offering. As a business proposition." "Is that what this is? Business?" His voice was carefully neutral, but she could hear the hurt beneath it. Alex reached across the table to take his hand. "No, you know it's not. But I thought framing it that way might make it easier for you to accept." Ethan's fingers tightened around hers. "I don't want your money, Alex. Not if it means you're paying to be here." "That's not what I'm suggesting," she insisted. "I believe in you, in this place. I want to be part of making it work not just for now, but for the future." She took a deep breath, making herself vulnerable in a way she rarely had before. "I want a future here, Ethan. With you." The words hung between them, honest and exposed. They had grown close over the weeks, their friendship deepening into something more, though neither had put it into words until now. Ethan's eyes searched hers, looking for uncertainty or hesitation. Finding none, he spoke softly. "You're sure? This isn't exactly the life you're used to." Alex smiled, thinking of the superficial glamour of her former existence compared to the authentic joy she had found here. "I've never been more sure of anything." That night marked a turning point. The spare room remained unused as Alex moved into Ethan's room, their lives becoming more fully intertwined. Together, they developed a plan for the farm, one that would honor its heritage while introducing innovations that could make it sustainably profitable. Alex's financial contribution allowed them to pay down a significant portion of the mortgage, giving them breathing room with the bank. The rest, they invested in equipment upgrades and preparations for expanding next season's planting. Word of their relationship spread through the small community, generating curiosity but mostly goodwill. To the people of Riverside, Alex was simply the woman who had decided to make a life with Ethan Morgan, a welcome development for a man they had worried might lose his family's farm. As harvest time approached, they worked from dawn to dusk, preparing equipment and coordinating with the neighboring farmers who would help bring in the crop. The work was exhausting, but exhilarating, filled with purpose and shared goals. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Ethan brought up something that had been on both their minds. "We should talk about what happens if someone recognizes you," he said gently. "It's bound to happen eventually." Alex nodded, having thought about this extensively. "I've been talking to my old agent," she admitted. Not about going back to acting, but about managing the inevitable publicity when my whereabouts become known. And what did she say? She thinks we should control the narrative, Alex explained. Do one exclusive interview with a respected journalist, tell our story on our terms, and then request privacy. Ethan considered this. Would that work? Maybe not completely, but it would be better than being ambushed, and honestly, most of Hollywood has moved on to fresher scandals. I'm old news. She smiled wryly. The director I was involved with is already on wife number 4. Their loss, my gain, Ethan said, pulling her closer on the porch swing they had recently installed. The harvest came in better than expected, the weather cooperating perfectly through the critical weeks. With the reduced mortgage burden and their careful planning, the farm showed its first profit in 5 years. Small, but symbolic of the turnaround they were engineering together. As winter approached, bringing shorter days and the promise of snow, Alex found herself more content than she'd ever been. The farmhouse, drafty and in need of updates though it was, had become home in a way her luxury condo in Los Angeles never had been. Their lives had settled into a rhythm of work and companionship that satisfied something deep within her. She still occasionally checked entertainment news sites, keeping tabs on the industry she had left behind, but with decreasing frequency and emotional investment. One morning in early December, as they sat at the kitchen table planning spring planting over steaming mugs of coffee, Ethan handed her a small box wrapped in simple brown paper. "What's this?" Alex asked, surprised. "Early Christmas present," Ethan replied, an uncharacteristic nervousness in his voice. "Go ahead, open it." Inside the box was an antique ring, a delicate gold band, set with a modest diamond flanked by 2 smaller sapphires. "It was my grandmother's," Ethan explained, as Alex stared at it in wonder. "Mom always said it should go to the woman I wanted to spend my life with." "Ethan," Alex whispered, emotion making it difficult to speak. "I know we haven't talked specifically about marriage," he continued, words coming faster now. "And I understand if you're not ready, or if you need more time, or—" Alex silenced him with a kiss, her heart so full she thought it might burst. When they finally separated, she was smiling through tears. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, to all of it." Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "I love you, Alex, not because of who you were before, but because of who you are now, with me." "I love you too," she replied, the words feeling both momentous and entirely natural. "And I've never been happier than I am right here, right now." 2 days later, an entertainment blogger posted a blurry photo taken by someone who claimed to have spotted Alexandra St. James at a hardware store in Riverside. The post generated modest interest, with some commenters expressing skepticism and others speculating wildly about what the formerly A-list actress might be doing in rural America. Alex and Ethan saw the post while checking email at the kitchen table. They exchanged a look, both recognizing that their quiet period was likely coming to an end. "Ready to implement our media plan?" Ethan asked, his tone making it clear that whenever she decided, he would support her. Alex looked around the kitchen at the faded curtains she had helped select, the stack of seed catalogs they had been poring over, the money work boots by the door that belonged to both of them now. She thought about the life they were building together, solid and real in a way her previous existence had never been. "Yes," she said with quiet confidence. "Let's tell our story." 3 weeks later, a respected journalist from a major magazine arrived at the farm to interview them. Alex had chosen her carefully, someone known for integrity and thoughtful reporting rather than sensationalism. They had agreed on parameters. No photos of the inside of their home, no questions about the intimate details of their relationship. Focus on the farm and their future plans rather than rehashing the scandal. The interview took place on the porch, which had become their favorite spot regardless of weather. As snow fell gently around them, Alex told her story, not just the scandal that had driven her away from Hollywood, but the journey that had led her to find something more meaningful than fame. "I'm not saying I'll never act again," she told the journalist, Ethan's hand warm in hers. "But it would have to be the right project, something with substance. And it would have to accommodate my life here, which is my priority now." "And what about the wedding?" the journalist asked. Any details you're willing to share? Alex and Ethan exchanged a smile. They had decided on a small ceremony in the spring, with just close friends and family in attendance. Let's just say it will reflect who we are now, Alex replied. Simple, authentic, private. The article, when it appeared 2 months later, was everything they had hoped, for thoughtful, balanced, and focused on Alex's transformation rather than her fall from grace. The accompanying photos showed them together on the farm, her engagement ring visible but not highlighted, both of them clearly at ease in their surroundings. There was a brief flurry of follow-up media interest, with paparazzi making the journey to Riverside, in hopes of capturing more intimate glimpses of the former star's new life. But, when met with the united front of a small town protecting its own four, Alex was considered one of them. Now most gave up, and moved on to more accessible targets. Spring arrived with its promises of renewal and growth. The fields surrounding the farmhouse turned from brown to green, new life pushing up through soil warmed by the strengthening sun. They planted more acreage than the farm had seen in cultivation for decades, implementing sustainable practices that would protect the land for future generations. On a perfect May morning, with apple blossoms scenting the air, Alex and Ethan were married beneath the ancient oak tree that had stood witness to 4 generations of Morgans. The ceremony was attended by a small group, Jake and other friends from town, Ethan's cousins from various parts of the country, and a select few people from Alex's former life who had proven themselves true friends. Alex wore a simple white dress and flowers in her hair, which had grown out to its natural color-warm honey blonde that caught the sunlight as she spoke her vows. Ethan, in a new suit that he would later joke was reserved for weddings and funerals, looked at her with such open adoration that several guests were moved to tears. "I never expected to find you," Alex said when it was her turn to speak, her voice clear in the spring air. "But now, I can't imagine my life without you. You saw me, really saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. You gave me a home when I was lost, and I promise to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that gift." Ethan's response was equally heartfelt. "You came into my life when I thought I had lost everything that mattered. You helped me save this land that has been in my family for generations. But more importantly, you showed me that a legacy isn't just about preserving the past, it's about building a future. Our future. Together." The reception was held in the barn, which had been transformed with fairy lights and spring flowers. They danced to music played by a local band, ate food prepared by friends, and cut a cake baked by the owner of the town's small bakery. Later, as evening fell and the celebration continued around them, Ethan led Alex away from the crowd, out to the porch of the farmhouse. In the distance, they could see the lights of the barn, hear the laughter and music of their guests. "Happy?" Ethan asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind as they looked out at the land that was now truly theirs, not just legally, but emotionally, a shared project and passion. "Completely," Alex replied, leaning back against him. "Although I have something to tell you that might make this day even more memorable." Ethan turned her gently to face him, curiosity in his eyes. "What is it?" Alex took his hand and placed it on her stomach, still flat, but containing the secret she had confirmed just days earlier. "We're going to need to add on to the farmhouse. The next generation of Morgans is coming sooner than we planned." The joy that spread across Ethan's face was luminous in the gathering dusk. "Really? You're sure?" Alex nodded, her own happiness reflected in his expression. "Doctor confirmed it yesterday. I wanted to wait until today to tell you a wedding gift of sorts." Ethan gathered her close, his touch gentle as if she had suddenly become fragile. "Best gift ever," he whispered against her hair. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Alex replied, the words no less powerful for having been said many times before. They stood together on the porch of the farmhouse that had seen so much history and would now witness their future unfolding. In the distance, the wheat fields stretched toward the horizon, young plants reaching for the sky with the promise of harvest to come. Closer by, the vegetable garden they had expanded together was showing its first spring growth. The fruit trees they had planted were in bloom, and the renovations they had begun on the old homestead were taking shape. As twilight deepened into night, they returned to their celebration. To the friends and family who had gathered to witness their commitment, But the quiet moment they had shared on the porch, the acknowledgement of the life they had built, and the one they had created together, remained with them. A perfect emblem of the journey that had brought them to this place. Alexandra St. James, once the toast of Hollywood, had disappeared. But Alex Morgan had found her way home. The rusted pickup truck that had broken down in Ethan's farmyard 18 months earlier still sat behind the barn. Retired from road trips but kept as a reminder of how unexpected circumstances can lead to the greatest happiness. Sometimes, when they passed it on their way to the fields, Ethan would tease Alex about her subtle disguise. And she would laugh, remembering how desperately she had tried to be invisible. Now, seeing clearly and loved completely, she had never felt more real. The ancient oak tree that had witnessed their wedding spread its branches over the farmhouse, its roots reaching deep into the soil, just as their own had done two unlikely people who had found each other at exactly the right moment, when each needed the other most. Their story, like the farm itself, was still being written, one season flowing into the next, each bringing its own challenges and joys. But the foundation was solid, built on truth rather than illusion, on substance rather than image. And that, Alex knew with bone-deep certainty, would endure long after the cameras had turned away and the world had moved on to newer, shinier stories. Some love stories end when the credits roll. Theirs was just beginning.